Hey guys, what I'm doing now is with that plastic engine, I couldn't get there's no crank in that engine, so I couldn't get any pulleys to line up. Well, I couldn't get any pulleys on it at all, so I couldn't really mock up the water pump, the alternator, the fuel pump, or anything there. So what I decided to do is I put the 468 in here. I'm trying to sell this motor, but I'm not getting any serious bites on it, so I figured, well, I'll stick it in here and get it running. So I've got the fuel pump on there, and I've got all the returns. I put a fuel log on it, and then I run all the returns into the log, and then from the log it just has one main return going into the fuel cell. So what I've got here, if I can remember this correctly, this is main bypass, secondary bypass, high speed bypass, and then it's got the fuel shut off return here. So it's got a little lever back here. When you shut the fuel off, this is the main fuel line, so when you shut that off, it'll just return all the fuel back to the fuel cell, and it'll shut the fuel off to the injectors. So that's how that all works. And there's actually a pill in here that you can adjust for the main bypass. That gives you your that's actually how you tune the motor. It gives you your power. The more fuel you bypass, the leaner the motor runs. The leaner the motor will run. So the bigger the jet, the leaner the motor. The smaller the jet, the fatter the motor. And this is the high speed. When you get to a certain RPM, this thing will pretty much, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but this will stop flowing enough, and this one takes over to flow more, because the higher RPM you go, the more that thing is going to pump. So this thing will only flow so much, and it's basically up to about 6,000 RPM, and then after that this one takes over to bypass more fuel as the pressure increases. And then it's got the idle bypass. Now both this one and this one will be closed at idle, and then well, this one will still be open because there's really no restriction there, but this one will open up at idle, so that the motor doesn't run too fat at idle, and then once it reaches a certain pressure, it'll close off, and then the other ones take over. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, if you guys know more about fuel injection than I do, because I'm just a beginner, so I might be wrong here. I'm going to learn quite a bit as I run this through the season. So this is really, I've had it running before, but I've never really had it running in competition and tested the system, so it's going to be a learning curve for me, and hopefully you guys that have some experience can give me some advice along the way. So yeah, this motor's got a crank trigger on it, so I'm going to use the crank trigger. And I put the paint of the dash, and I just kind of have it sitting there, only because I might be getting the car painted, and I don't want to put the window in before it's painted, and I don't want to put the dash in before I put the window in, because I want to get at the screws underneath it. So we'll see what happens there. I'm still waiting for an estimate on getting the car painted. So they may just end up painting the doors black again and putting the sponsor on there, and away we go. But we'll see what happens. So now I got to mount the vacuum pump and the alternator. And if the water pump doesn't fit, I may have to get a remote mount water pump for this thing, and then just get some adapters to go on here, and then just run some hoses down to the water pump. That's what I'd like to do, but that water pump's about 450 bucks plus the fittings and everything. It's going to be over 500 bucks just for a water pump, so we'll see what happens. And then I got to get another adapter for the upper rat hose to go off of this, and just run a hose down here. So that's the easy part. But these valve covers aren't going to stay on there. They don't fit the nitrous very good. You can see that one's just kind of sitting up because I can't get it down past the foggers there. Plus the vacuum pump fittings are on the other valve covers, so I'd like to get the other ones chromed because it looks pretty good, all blinged out. Headers look really nice, but I don't know what it would cost to get these chromed or polished. I don't know if I have the patience to sand them all and polish them. But so I'll get the water pump and whatever, all that fitted. I gotta get a couple of fittings yet, and then I'll start doing some basic wiring so I can fire this thing up in here, and then I'll finish off the wiring. But yeah, that's gonna look nice in there. Steering shaft, I haven't even tried to see if it fits because this motor is lower, the deck is lower, and the head ports are lower, so I don't know if anything's gonna fit. But it'll work good for mock-up. Get the fuel system going, get all the pulleys lined up, and the wiring done. I'm gonna excuse me, I want to plumb in the nitrous. My plan's there. This is the nitrous regulator, and I'm going to hard plumb it in. It's going to sit here, and then one main fuel line coming off the fuel pump down there, and then hard lines same as this going to the fuel solenoids, because there's really no good place to mount that, so I figured that would be a good place to put it. And then I know I mentioned on my other video on the Roadrunner about the checking the fuel pressure on the oh, I can't think, for monitoring the fuel pressure for setting up the nitrous. I have a gauge that I set up for the Roadrunner, but I think that this one, that's what this was for. I just cap that off when I'm not using it, and when I want to flow the system, then I just put my flow gauge on there and flow the nitrous off of that. So that's going to work out good. And then I got the gauge on here that'll go inside the car. So I was also thinking what I might do here is put in a permanent system, a permanent flow gauge that runs back to the fuel cell, and that way I can just adjust the regulator right from here and watch the gauge here. Then I don't have to look at it going down track. I might do that too, I don't know yet. But okay, I'll get on it, and thanks for watching, guys.